From the short grass plains of the Serengeti to the floodplains of Mana pools, these are the stories from the wild. Hi everybody, welcome back to Above Africa Stories from the Wild. Now, I have to apologize. It has been a while and there's a good reason for it. I've been a little bit busy and been traveling quite extensively. Then I had an operation and it was recovery, and then I traveled again. So there was about 2 months, 3 months I think actually, where I haven't actually recorded anything. But hopefully this is again the first of many episodes for this season. And if you haven't watched any of the episodes yet, just go back into YouTube, go back into Spotify, go and check it out. There's some really valuable content in there. I talk about all the great things that you can experience on safari. I talk about different destinations and safari lodges and what I get up to out in the wild with Francois Fourie Safaris. And this specific episode, I thought I would talk a little bit about what we actually do at Francois Fourie Safaris before diving into the numerous episodes of different lodges that I've been to over the last 3 months. But I thought it would be great to give you guys a little bit of background on who I am, where I'm from, what I've done, how I got here, and hopefully that paints a bit of a picture. I'm not really somebody that likes to talk about myself, but I think in this case, giving some background on what I do and what I've done in the past will give you a little bit more of an idea of who I am and what we do at Francois Fourie Safari. So in saying that, I guess we have to go back, way back, and where it all began. And I think for a lot of people that live in South Africa, we were mostly fortunate to have gone to the bush when we were younger, and for me it was no different. I was very fortunate to have grown up going to the bush like on a yearly basis, a number of different times for various different reasons. And I have to give my dad the credit for that, because he's the one that kind of gave me the love for the bush and taught me about birds and trees when I was still very, very young and out in the field with them. And I still very, very vividly remember my first time going to the Kruger. I don't have very good memory when it comes to when I was very small. But this one memory is actually quite interesting because it's one of my most vivid memories. And I think I was probably about 3 years old, somewhere there. And we went to the Kruger with the family. And it was my mom and dad and my 2 sisters. And my dad drove this white Mercedes Benz. And I just remember like this beige seats with little holes in it. I don't know why I remember that. But my most vivid memory outside of that was a leopard walking past our vehicle, like right past our vehicle. And for some reason, that memory kind of stuck with me. And I guess taking that memory and taking myself going to the bush very, very often from a very young age, that kind of built the foundation of what I'm doing today. So my initial phases of the love for nature and the bush definitely came from a very young age, going to the Kruger National Park on holidays like many South Africans do. We are very fortunate to have this beautiful country where we can actually just go and visit it. And then going to the bush with my dad and spending time with him and him teaching me about all the birds and the different names of birds. And I've got a weird knowledge of Afrikaans bird names and English bird names. My wife always jokes that I can name all the bird names in both languages. But that's kind of where it all stemmed from. And then from there, went through school and kind of in my latter years of high school, we were a bunch of friends, and we're still good friends now. We're all from the West Rand of South Africa. For those of you who know the West Rand, will probably have a bit of a chuckle now. And one of our mates had a property in the Umbabat Reserve, which is adjacent to the Timbavati. It's part of the Greater Kruger National Park in a place called Ingwalala. And that reserve became like a place for our friends to go on a breakaway holiday, just friends. And we would stay in a little rondavel and we would make fire, and we had a game view, and you can go and drive yourself as long as you've had a license, you were able to go and drive by yourself through this beautiful reserve. And yeah, we saw some amazing things when we were out in the Umbabat Reserve. I still remember seeing the jacaranda pride with all the white lines in it. Amazing. The Argyle male leopard, still till this day, probably one of the biggest male leopards I've ever seen. And it was really an amazing time. And I remember one of my best mates, Harry, we were sitting on the banks of the Sharam-Luvi River. And we were probably in our, I can't remember, maybe our second year of varsity or something like that. And when we sat next to each other, we had a nice cold beer, and we were like watching the sun going down and this dry, massive dry riverbed of the Sharam-Luvi River. And I just kind of looked into the distance, and I told him, I was like, this is where I should be. This is where I need to be. And that's kind of where I guess the spark came that I need to go and pursue this. But I finished my studies at varsity. I thought it was an important thing to do. It's always good to have a safety net, and I was in a very fortunate position that I could do that. And then I started exploring some options on where I could get into the field of training. And I was very fortunate to get into a training course with a big lodge brand called Singita. It's a kind of very famous brand across Africa, very high-end luxury brand. And they used to run a training school there, where you would do your initial Fugasa qualifications. And if you're very lucky, you might get a job there. But if you're not, then you go into the world with your qualifications and a reference letter, and Bob's your uncle. You hopefully get a job somewhere. After the 6 months, I was very fortunate that Singita offered me a position as a junior field guide at their Sabi Sand property, which is where the training was done as well. But we spent a lot of time in the Kruger National Park and the Sweni concession, or the Nwanetsi concession. We did a lot of our walking, and that's kind of getting your trails guide qualification. And we had some amazing times. There's probably a whole episode just on our training expeditions over that 6 months. Met some amazing people on that training course, and stepped into the world of guiding at Singita. And at Singita, I was incredibly fortunate to have been surrounded by a lot of different individuals within the guiding world that was mentors and kind of looked after you, but also kind of dragged you over the coals when you did something wrong. And it really kind of paved the foundation and the way forward for me. And I was really, really fortunate. I mean, there's too many people really to mention, but the people at Singita really helped my career significantly, and not only in kind of the knowledge side and the qualification side with Fugasa, but just how things should be done. For any one of you that knows Singita as a company, it's an incredibly high-end, really on-point safari company. They've got beautiful lodges across Africa, and they do the safari experience incredibly, incredibly well. And that was kind of my step into the world of guiding. So I learned from the best and guided at one of the best places in Africa, and it opened up a lot of doors for me down the line. But while I was at Singita, I had a love for guiding, and upped my qualifications until professional field guide level, and was very fortunate to kind of end my career as one of the assistant head guides for the group. And it was really fond memories of not just guiding, but then going into like a managerial role and facilitating and mentoring to some extent. And that kind of pushed me to get more Fugasa qualifications. And I remember Mark Brodrake, who was the head guide there at the time, just told me, like, just push, become an assessor, just push, it's a lot of admin, but go there, get it. And I eventually did, and I became a Fugasa assessor, which helped me significantly further down the line. So post Singita, this was now 2018-ish, I think it was. After about 8 years with Singita and guiding in the Sabi Sand and in the Kruger, I stepped kind of out of that on-site role, and then got involved with another big lodge group where kind of I learned so much on a completely different level was with, which is now called the Moore Collection. Moore Collection also has a number of different lodges across South Africa. In Thornybush, they've got Manwana, they've got Lion Sands in the Sabi Sand, Marataba and the Waterberg, and Cape Gadagan Hotel. So they really, when I stepped into that role, my role was kind of divided into a number of different things. I was involved with Moore Field Guide College, which is a college, a FAGASA accredited training college that trains guides. And at that point in time, I was involved in the marketing and sales for that, but also had a component of my role being in the training world. So I would go to the different lodges and spend some time with the guides, do some assessments on site if needed, do some assessment at the college where needed. And the kind of role evolved fairly quickly. I mean, COVID was there in between that. That was an interesting time as well. But that also helped me to refine some of my skills and really spend time with amazing people that taught me so much about the industry behind the scenes. And for me, that was always a big goal. I wanted to be a guide. I wanted to learn as much as I possibly can, knowledge-wise, guest experience-wise, operationally, what's going on the ground, get into that manager role, and really understand lodge operations, which I definitely did at Singita, and then I did some freelance stints at a number of other lodges in the country. And then going into my role with Moore Collection, it allowed me to spend time with like Rob Moore, the CEO of Moore Collection, and Helen, who's the head of sales. And there's so many different people in that world that kind of helped me along the way. Andy, who was the head of operations, and Harvey, who was the GM at the college and a very well-respected guide in the industry. And, with all those people, I kind of always tried to take little golden nuggets and spend time with them and ask a lot of questions and try and learn as much as I possibly can about the other side of the industry. And that sales and marketing role at the college kind of evolved, where I stepped more away from that side and I stepped into the Moore Collection side of it, where I then became the kind of head of content, if you want to call it that, within the marketing department, and help with social media and creating content and numerous other things that I was busy with there. But it really gave me a good understanding of what a lodge operationally looks like on the back end of it at the head office. And that made such a big difference to what I'm doing right now, understanding the sales teams at lodges, and just learning about the industry from a completely different perspective, going to travel shows like in Durban and We Are Africa, and understanding that whole world. And then on the side, my kind of role as in that guiding world was still very prominent, and I was still being asked to do some assessments at the lodges and at the college, and being a mentor. And I subsequently then also did a lot of wildlife photographic training with Canon at the lodges. So I had such a wide array of knowledge that I gained from these two core places, Singita and Moore Collection, and it really allowed me to build such a strong foundation on where I am today. And obviously from a wildlife photographic point of view, that has always been there. I started taking photos in 2010, 2011, somewhere there. I started off with a Nikon, and then migrated, I think it was a 7D with 100 to 300 Sigma or something like that. I can't quite remember, but it was something in that line. And then just kept on taking photos and taught myself, and the skill just grew and grew and grew to where I am today. So what do we do at Francois Fourie Safaris? Well, it's a company that is split into three pillars, if I can put it like that. The one is obviously photographic safaris. Being a wildlife photographer myself, I love hosting guests on safaris and workshops and helping them just enhance their skill in the field and getting the best out of their camera, the best out of a sighting, for them to go back with an incredible portfolio. So I host photographic safaris across Africa with very small groups. So we generally don't do more than maybe between 4 and 6. That's kind of the max, but usually it ends up being like 4 or 5 guests. just so that we can keep it nice and small and exclusive, so that everybody can kind of get my time when we're on in the field and back at the lodge. And these photographic safaris are not just going out on game drive or going on a walk like in Mana Pools and I'm there. When we come back, we sit and we look at images and we talk about workflow and we edit images and we see, let you edit an image and let me critique it, and I'll edit an image, and we look at it and we really try and enhance your photography as best possible. Sometimes we get photographers that are incredibly skilled photographers that don't necessarily need a lot of help when it comes to editing, but I can bring something else to the forefront for them that might change the way they look at things, because I've got this background of actually physically guiding on the ground and understanding animal behavior, and having spent most of my life in Africa watching these animals. We as guides, and if you've guided in Africa, you really have such a good foundation of what animals do and how they do it and why they do it, that you can put a photographer in the right place at the right time. And it's such an important thing as a photographic guide to be able to have that skill, not just to know what the animals are doing, but also to know what a photographer wants. Because I'm a photographer myself, I know what to look for, I know where to go, I know what you as a guest are looking to try and achieve from past experiences and from conversations with our guests. So by the end of a photographic safari, your portfolio will look completely different to what you would have thought, and it would be just so much better. And if we get that right, we walk away happy, and that is what it's ultimately about. It's about being able to give our guests the most incredible experience that they can possibly get. The second pillar is private guiding. Again, this is where I would go out with my guests, and I will host them throughout their stay. There's photographic components to it, but this is privately guided is slightly different. You bring a different array of skills to the party, where it's not just photographically focused, but it's knowledge-based, experience-based focus, really slowing down, taking it all in. And we facilitate and host you. Again, because we travel across Africa, we've got the knowledge of different areas, and we work very closely with the team on the ground. We work very closely with the guides, the local guides, who've got incredible knowledge about the local areas. And we make sure we kind of extract as much as possible from the guides and from the lodges to make sure that your experience is as best as it possibly can be. And then obviously we are there to facilitate, anything logistically that comes up. We were on a safari now the other day in Kenya for 2 weeks, and we got to the airport and we were way over the luggage limit. And we made a quick plan, and happy days, we managed to get everybody on board, and the guests were happy and they didn't have to worry about their luggage. And that really could have only happened if we were there facilitating that process without any hiccups, because we knew exactly what we needed to do. So in a nutshell, that is what the private safari is about, and it's very exclusive. We do everything for you and your group, and ultimately your family or whomever you are traveling with. It could be a solo traveler, couples or families or groups, and there's really so much value to have one of us as your private guide with you during your stay, and we just have an amazing time, so much fun, and it will be memories that you will absolutely last for a lifetime when you come to the end of your safari as a privately guided trip. Then the third one is kind of the traditional way a safari is being booked. So you will maybe send me an email saying, "Hey Francois, I would like to go on a safari with my family. This is what we want, this is our budget, this is how long we want to travel. Can you please help us put a trip together? We don't need you to travel with us. We just want to have a nice family safari." Or again, if you're a solo traveler, it doesn't matter. It could be a variety of different types of travelers. And then we plan that safari for you from start to finish, and make sure you go to the right lodges, the logistics are all sorted out, and make sure that the booking process and your stay go as seamless as possible for you and your group that you are traveling with. So from a experience perspective and what we offer as a company from Francois Fourie Safaris, it is those three pillars. It is photographic safaris focused purely on wildlife photography, very, very focused safari, Privately guided safaris number 2, where we host you, and it's just an exclusive, intimate, high-end, bespoke trip, to what we would call FIT bookings, where you come to us and you say, please help us plan a safari, and we will go to the ends of the world to make sure that your trip is incredible and amazing without any hiccups. And for us, it's all about guest experience. And again, that's where I lean back on my time that I spent at companies like Singita and More Collection, where it is very high end, very focused in attention to detail, and been very fortunate and privileged to have spent time at those places, which have laid the foundation to where I am today. So that is what we do at Francois Fourie Safaris. We make sure and we plan incredible trips to Africa, sometimes even beyond, and to make sure that your experience in Africa is the best that it possibly can be. Attention to detail, and we just know that we can do an incredible job at bringing people to Africa, creating memorable experiences, and capturing moments that will last a lifetime. So in saying that, that is kind of a nutshell on where I came from, what I did, where I am now, and what we do at Francois Fourie Safari. So if you are looking to come to Africa, if you are looking to book a safari and come and experience the beauty that is safari, get in touch with us. I will put a link in the description below on contact information of Francois Fourie Safaris. And we would love to plan something truly, truly memorable. And we can't wait to host you or see you in Africa. So in saying that, have an amazing time, everybody. Have an incredible day. And I will see you all out in the field. Cheers.